Alrighty, let's get down to business. This is a run through for the Paladins PC stat sheet I made for the placement rounds and Paladins World Championship. I'm going to quickly run you through what it does, how you can use it, all the different functions it has, and how a little bit about how the data works. Also just been outside, so I'm wearing a big, thick, heavy coat, and I have to pause to sniff a few times because feeling sick. Alright, so first of all, if you don't have this sheet already, go click the link in the description. Don't download it unless you want to upload it back to Google Drive again. Just make a copy, add it to your drive, then you can edit all the functions. And Steam is popping up in the bottom, so thanks whoever that was. I can probably close Steam, but that would take time. So let's have a look and see what we got. First of all, you got this helper page at the bottom. Ignore this. This is literally just so I could do VLOOKUPs more easily and not give myself a headache whilst doing so. Data as well, this is just data validation stuff in here. It's set up kind of terribly. My mouse wheel also squeaks, so ignore that. This is the first of the database pages. This is your match database. This is basically set data. And the reason, if I set that to 75%, you can see it's got room for up to 7 games in there. The reason that I have 2 separate databases is because of map bans and I'm lazy. So there's that. Realistically, if you know anything about database structure, especially in sheets, and you're looking at this, you're going to tell me exactly why it's terrible. That's cool. I know it's terrible already. Don't do that. I'm going to make a better one for next year, trust me. But hey, this is my first attempt at really learning this stuff, so it is what it is. Anyway, if you want to find a match number, if you want to use that for stuff like draft lookup, it's all in here. The match numbers are really important, and I'll show you why in a second. As far as the game database goes, you have, let me zoom this out to that's zoom in, zoom out. All this stuff in here. This is basically every bit of data I could get easily for games, drafts, player picks, info, and stuff like that. The helper column is what I use for stuff like VLOOKUP, so that's quite important. You have your event, your match number, again, corresponding match number from the match database, so super simple lookup if you need it. Team 1, Team 2, these are, again, just to compile helpers. Game winner, map, first pick team, second pick team for each subsequent game, score, your bans, your picks, your who played what, and then your composition styles, and I'll explain that when we get around to it in the stats pages. So, view draft. Say you want to look up a game and you're like, oh man, I really wanted to see what the draft was for the set between, who should we use? Let's use the World Championship Finals, for example. So we're going to say, oh, I want to see what the draft was between Na'Vi and Envy in Game 5. So we're going to go ahead and select our event here. Going to enter a number between 1 and 26. Obviously, that's the number of matches that we had for the placement round, but we know that it's match number 7 of the World Championship. It's going to go ahead and enter that. We have Na'Vi versus Envy. It's going to spit out our team scores. It's going to spit out the event. It's going to spit out the match number, the bans here at the top for maps, and then it's going to spit out all of the drafts. So this draft lookup is kind of useful if you want to see different stuff. Here's Game 5, here's Game 6. I've already forgotten which one we talked about, but there it is. And if you want to see different compositions as well, it'll tell you which one they used. Both teams used exclusively standard composition. How boring. Anyway, is it all standard? I thought there was a grok in here somewhere. Or am I confused with the last set? I'm confused with the last set. Before then, the SSG one. Either way, it also tells you stuff like maps, tells you who won on what map, yada yada yada. Super useful thing. We could do different one like placement rounds number 2, for example. Will show us the Virtus Pro Sanguine set. Only 2 games in that one. Anyway, on to the next tab. It is the event/stats tab. So the way that this works is basically compiling total stats, placement round stats, and World Championship stats using VLOOKUPs just to pull automatically from there. This is a very quick point of reference that I made primarily to go, okay, total pick bans. Let's sort by, or actually let's do a better example because there's a set of filters across the top here. I'm also making this up as I go along, folks. I don't have a script for this video, so bear with me. Either way, say we wanted to see the difference in win rate, pick rate, total pick ban rate, and so on and so forth in flanks between the World Championship and the placement round and total overall. What we can do is we can use the filter system here to only select flanks, and then we can look at all these different values. You can see that the win rate for the World Championship for Androxus is only 33%, 57% for the placement round. So interesting little bits of stuff there. The reason that we're using percentage rather than individual pick numbers is because the data sample size for the World Championship is comparatively so much smaller than the placement round that it made sense to just compare trends rather than anything else. Flank's not a good example for that as well. For trends overall, frontline would probably be a little bit better, and then you see we have more data. Either way, select all of these again so I can see everything. If you want to filter it, for example, by who is the most winning champion in the World Championship, you can filter by Z to A, and so on and so forth. If you want to reset this overall afterwards, shout out to Grover, by the way, right at the top there. You know my boy is up there. Then just sort champions A to Z. So yeah, very quick comparison page. Kind of useful. Just at a glance, it is filtered or conditional formatted as well, so you can see lowest color is 0%, white is 100% right there, just to show you from, just through a grayscale color gradient, what's been picked the most, or what has the highest value in any specific column. Anyway, onto our total stats page. This is where things get a little bit more interesting, because you can see compared to just the percentages that you have here, you have numerical data values. The same thing applies. You can do a lot of sorting, a lot of formatting. I actually need to go ahead and add a right border there, that's better. So if you want to see the total most winning champion, we can see that it actually was Ceres. Grover has forsaken me right now. And so we can use different we can use different filtering, we can use different selections, we can sort by flanks and stuff like that, but it will tell you all the individual numbers, so you get a little bit more in the way of context to your stats right here. You also have number of bans and picks by class, which is interesting, number of unique picks, number of composition styles, and you have your maps, and then overall your first pick win percent and second pick win percent. So you can see who wins more or less. First pick is OP. Please nerf the drafting process. Don't do that. So for example, what we can extrapolate from that is that we saw 31 unique picks throughout the entire duration of the placement round and the World Championship. In terms of composition styles, 174 of them were standard comp. Running through these real fast, I can give you a quick explanation of what they all are. Quad DPS is quad DPS, it makes sense. DPS being a flank or a damage. Triple DPS is, as you might expect, triple DPS. No sub-specification for whether it's triple DPS and triple DPS 2 frontline, triple DPS 2 support, triple DPS 1 frontline 1 support. We're assuming 1 frontline 1 support. If it's anything wackier than that, it's going to be a statistical anomaly. Yeah. Just like my inability to speak or my ability to speak on a good day, and therefore it kind of doesn't matter for what we're using these stats for. Standard composition is 2 DPS, 2 frontline, 1 support. Triple frontline is triple frontline. Quad frontline is quad frontline. If I need explanations with this, I really don't know what to tell you. Double support and double front is the same thing that it says in the tin, and double sub, double DPS is also the same thing right there. That would be a little bit more of a wacky one, maybe if you're playing damage pip or something like that, you're running a triple DPS comp. Maps banned and picked are pretty self-explanatory. Frozen Guard actually overtook Fish Market, the place where teams go to lose. Looking at you, Navi. Which is quite interesting to me. But beyond that, let's just go through the rest of the pages real fast. Placement round stats, it's exactly the same thing without this little box at the bottom, but just the placement round. So we had 30 unique picks during the placement round, 28 during the World Championship, so a little bit in the way of less stuff there. But again, you've got all your different stats breakdowns. If you want to look more closely at each individual one of those, you can. Now, map stats is basically the same thing as before, but you can select what map you want to look at the picks on. So the reason that I said that Talus is bad on Brightmarsh is because I can select Brightmarsh, go to Talus, and go, oh no, we have a 40% win rate. Not great. So browse at your leisure. I encourage you to. Team stats is pretty much the same thing. Let's use Envy for an example. Actually, let's use... Who played it all through? SSG is probably the best one I have because I think they played the most games out of anyone. And you have a good breakdown of who played what, or what champions were played by what team there. So you can do a little bit more of in-depth stuff if you want to have a look at it. I should specify as well that map stats, team stats, and player stats are for both events. They're for the total values rather than just dialed into a specific event. If you want to make a calculator for these, be my guest. I got sick of putting in count ifs. Now, the player stats is the more interesting one because what we can do is stuff like go all the way down to, or just type in here. It's all data validation, so you can type in, it will start to pull it up. Rock Monkey, and see that Rock Monkey had a 100% win rate with Cassie at the World Championship. Didn't lose a single game, and so on and so forth. But either way, using a player like Ares, for example, for Space Station, who did play through quite a few, we have more picks here. You can sort by total picks as well, which is useful, so we can see everything that was played, the different win rates, so on and so forth. If you want to reset it again, just sort A to Z by champion. Then you have your class picks down here, the number of unique picks at the bottom, and the number of unique picks is quite interesting, I find. That's useful for kind of setting up player profiles and seeing how versatile they are, especially if they're, winning and losing on different champions, so interesting information. Now the pick position spreadsheet, or subsheet is an interesting one here. If you want to see where a champion is picked, then you put the champion in here. Let's use Ying as an example, or actually let's use Inara because she's the most polarizing. So we can see that Inara was picked a total of 69 times during both of the events. Nice. Majority goes first pick. Second pick, there's a little bit more here. You can see also down here how many times your champion wins in a specific pick position. So typically just overall, Inara just straight up wins more if they're picked by the first pick team. Now, this is likely to do, again, this is extrapolation of data from here and kind of an indication of how to use these stats. We see that Inara has picked a ton in that first pick spot, only a 54% win rate. Second pick spot, 26% win rate. 50% down here, only 2, more of an anomaly, 7 picks here, and a 71% win rate. So what this is telling us, primarily, Inara, very, very, very valuable pick. You can see that by the pick prioritization. You should know this already, but if you didn't, well, there you go. Secondly, if Inara is picked in that first pick spot, she is typically the most valuable champion on the board. Other valuable ones will be being banned. She's picked in here. That usually means that something really OP has gone the first pick, contributing to why she sucks in this pick position. Because you're probably letting through something like a Khan, or you're probably letting through something like a Makoa. Don't let through Makoa, I don't know what to tell you. In this position as well, if she's picked here, this probably means that you're getting Makoa and Inara, or something like that, unless you're going for a really weird first pick like a Lian, like we saw in the finals, if you just want to strip Creative's champion pool. Either way, another calculator on the next page is wins with versus wins versus. So if you want to see, for example, I've got it set up for Lian and Ying here. I would just leave it like that. So the number of times that Lian was picked here, the number of times that Ying was picked, the number of times that they win together, the number of times that they lose together, and the number of times that they are picked together total. So Lian wins with Ying when picked on the same team as Ying 53% of the time out of all the total times that they're picked together, and wins versus Ying 39% of the time. So what's really interesting about this is it tells us that despite death and taxes, when you're playing into a Ying as Lian, you're not actually doing quite as well as you might want to. Now, what's also interesting, though, is that the total picks are relatively similar here, but if there's a big disparity, you can often pick up some data and see like, oh, well, this champion is just never picked out of the context of being on the same team as this one, starting to allow you to see a little bit in the way of trends, which might be useful to discuss or pick up on or learn and develop new strategies for what works well together. Next page, win versus. This is just the background working of how this works, but there are some hidden pages for it. So if you wanted a little bit more in the way of detail, you have stuff here, more breakdowns, like that whole Lian and Ying thing. You can see that when Lian wins versus Ying, they're picked in these spots. When Lian loses versus Ying, they're picked in these spots. So primarily winning on that second pick team's first prioritization spot, primarily losing actually when prioritized in what I'm going to call the quintessential Cassie spot. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Wins with, again, it's just the workings here. Again, more hidden pages for this calculator, but if you can read what it says here, you can probably pick up on how it works. And win with multi, this is a little bit of an interesting one. So probably the best example we have for this is using Torvald as our base, but you've got room for up to 5 comparisons. So that whole wins with calculator here, so how many times does Lian win with Ying, loses with, total picks, and so on. Now we've just got 5 iterations of that, so if we pick Torvald as our champion to compare against, and we pick 4 different flanks, the only 4 which were picked during this entire series of tournaments, for example, we can see that the most winning flank with Torvald was, in fact, Talus. And then it was Eevee. And you have a nice little breakdown there, some graphical representation, which is always useful. And then right at the end, you got some comparison charts. So again, if you want to compare 2 teams, Na'Vi Envy is what I had up last, because that's what was going on in the finals. You can see the different champion bands that they have. You can see the different composition styles that they have. You can see the different champion picks that they've had. This is where it gets a little bit less clear and it's a little bit more annoying because I couldn't do stack bars for this for some reason. Again, if you want to take this spreadsheet, use the data and do something cool with it, please do. I encourage you to make it better. This is just me trying to kickstart you all into doing something useful. Anyway, you got your champion picks here. You can see that Na'Vi wins a lot with Cassie. Envy wins a lot with Cassie as well. Envy just wins all the time with Rock Monkey playing Cassie to a terrifying degree. Stuff like as well. We've got Envy playing a lot of Maldamba and winning a lot of Maldamba. Envy plays and wins with a lot of Ruckus and stuff like that. And then you've got your maps at the bottom here, and it's just all kind of useful data right now. Na'Vi exclusively ban Ice Mines. Should have banned the fish market. Regardless of that, folks, and just because I have to take the opportunity to meme that after that was literally what Goremizer said on cast, that is all the pages in this spreadsheet thing. So download, make a copy, do your thing, take the stats, do stuff with it that's cool, take the data, do stuff with it that's even better. Make a better graphical representation. Make a better graphical representation than I can speak that is better than this for everything that went on during the World Championship. For example, like I'd really love to see maybe some just like infographics come out of this and some useful stats and some useful stuff about individual teams. You could do team profiling. God, I really can't speak today. You could do team profiling. You could do commentator, by the way. You could do champion profiling, map profiling, all that different stuff. Lots of juicy data here for you to get your hands on. Please enjoy. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a tag on Twitter or something. You can at me at HighResVox and let me know if you have any questions or queries, and I will do my best to answer them. Just please don't tell me the data structure is awful because I already know. Goodbye.